what does Carlo's life and example say to you? And are there ways in which learning about him challenges you and encourages you to change something in your own life, whether that's how you engage with technology or making a deeper effort to go to Eucharistic adoration, to go to daily mass, the kinds of things that Carlo would encourage any of us to do.
Pope Francis calls him God's influencer. He's the saint in sneaker and jeans, the first millennial saint. And for us here at Kellenberg Memorial, St. Carlo Acutis is a part of our fabric, and at times it feels like he's a part of our student body. Welcome to Flight of the Firebirds, a Kellenberg Memorial podcast. I'm Mr. Castelli, a religion teacher here at Kellenberg Memorial, and the Scoutmaster of our Boy Scout Troop 87. Joining me for today's episode is our school chaplain, Father Daniel Griffin.
It's great to be here and to share the story of Carlo and the movie that we were able to watch together on Friday night.
Thanks, Father Dan. We also have two of our seniors, John Furlong and Abigail Moscola.
Hi, it's great to be here.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks, John and Abby. And we're thrilled to welcome our special guest, Christian Surtz, the co-director of Carlo Acutis' Roadmap to Reality. Christian, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
So to get us started, everybody else feel free to throw in any questions you have or anything you'd like to discuss. But I want to ask you in a general sense, I was really wondering as I watched the film, what was it like to talk with Carlo's family? Because you have many interviews with his parents, his cousins, his childhood friends. What was it like to meet his family? What was it like to have those extended conversations? What did you maybe learn about each one that you didn't know going into the film?
Yeah, Carlo's family has been incredible and just very gracious throughout the process. It's such a unique experience to be able to talk to the actual family members of a saint. And, the amazing thing is that this obviously is something they could have never imagined happening in their lifetime, but just the example that Carlo set and the way he lived his life, and obviously that's something that's moved them deeply, and that's been very, very evident in all the conversations that they shared with us throughout the making of the film, and then afterwards. We just had a Rome premiere of the film last week, where the family was in attendance, and that was just incredible. Mrs. Acutis, Antonia, Carlo's mother, spoke to the audience afterwards and shared many thoughts, and it's very clear that the faith of all of the family members has been greatly influenced by Carlo. In a lot of ways, Carlo actually brought his family to the faith, his parents, and then his two siblings who were born after his passing. It's every interaction I've had with him has been absolutely amazing, and it's very clear that their son, their brother Carlo, has impacted them deeply as well.
Yeah, I think that was one of the questions I had too. Like, I've seen so many interviews with Carlo's mom, and it was really special in your film to see Carlo's dad, to see him share his experiences. And also, I think you had, Carlo's friend too. I think that's just amazing for our young people to see that, someone's friend is now a saint, and
yeah,
the whole idea of our Christian journey is that, we are to become friends with many people, make good relationships, but to help them on their journey to heaven.
Absolutely. I think it really drives home, one of the points that we try to communicate in the film is that all of us are called to be saints and to, to live our faith to the fullest, and sainthood is attainable, and it's, there's lots of ways to live life heroically, and the stories of the martyrs, but there's also, Carlo's journey being honestly living a fairly ordinary life, but just doing so with such faith and the way he approached everything. It really drives home, and talking to the people who actually knew him, that, I can be a saint as well. I think that's something that I hope, we all should take away from learning about Carlo.
Was there one particular family member that said something that you didn't know that really struck out to you? And maybe since we're at a high school here, anything from that particularly maybe that you could share with our students?
I think honestly, with everything with the family, the biggest thing that has struck me is that, Carlo's parents, did not regularly attend Mass before Carlo kind of brought that into the family. And that's something we talk about in the film a little bit, and the story of how at a young age, Carlo grew deeper in his faith and brought his family into that. And so that's incredibly powerful, and just, seeing the impact he had on them, and for any young person to be able to just grow deeply in their faith, and to not sell themselves short on what can be possible with that. And for anybody at the school, that as you grow deeper in your faith, don't evangelization is something that can happen on even very, very small levels, and the ripple effects of that are huge. And the way Carlo honestly evangelized his family, and now his family is out there attending the canonization, and doing many interviews and speaking about Carlo and helping spread the messages he shared is absolutely amazing. So even at a very young age, what Carlo was able to do in not just deepening his faith, but sharing that. There's a story of Rajesh, his friend and babysitter, who is Hindu and converted to the faith after learning about it through Carlo. Just all these amazing stories of, at a very young age, what he was able to do, and just honestly sharing his experience of encountering Christ is just absolutely amazing. And I think, it really shows for anyone, any young person, share your faith. The results of that is something that only God will know.
Thank you.
I was blessed to be at the canonization as well, and
Awesome.
the two things that really stuck with me were you could feel the presence of the Holy Spirit in St. Peter's Square, and our Holy Father, Pope Leo, was just so full of joy when he came out before the canonization, just to express that to everyone there. Everybody was just blown away by his joy, and that he took the time out before the Mass to express that. And and then again during the first reading, when Carlo's brother got up there and proclaimed the first reading in perfect English, probably better than my English, and Italian is his first language. It was just so striking that, Carlo is such a real human, real person, of this generation. And there's his younger brother proclaiming the first reading. It was just an amazing experience for me as a priest, someone who has promoted Carlo Acutis and Pier Giorgio Frassati so much, to be there, to be present in St. Peter's Square for that beautiful occasion. I wonder what your thoughts were about that day.
Yeah, absolutely agreed. Everything you say about that. It was an amazing day, and I did not know that Carlo's brother was going to be the one doing the first reading. And that was I agree, that was amazing to witness. And then the family bringing up the gifts later in the Mass. I was up on the colonnade on the left side of the square, in the press area, taking photos and covering the event, but I absolutely agree. It was just completely full of joy. So many people there, so many young people in the audience and in the congregation. And despite the day being rescheduled and the changes, there is just amazing, joy-filled, grace-filled day. And just seeing the banners on the side of St. Peter's, the one of Pier Giorgio on the left and St. Carlo on the right, and banners that were actually actual photographs. And I don't know if that's actually been done before. I think even for Mother Teresa, it was a painting of her, but the images they used to create the banners were photographs, and it just really drives home in a real way just how relevant and relatable these newest saints of the Church are. And and then to have the family there, I just 100% agreed. It was an amazingly joyful and grace-filled day.
Yeah, so I noticed that as we've talked so far, the reality of Carlo Acutis is really what's stepping out. His family is real, the photographs are real. And in the film, I loved how it was similar. You were teaching the students about him, and they had the chance to have the real encounter when they visited his tomb. And so with Abby here, the Marianist took our students from both of our schools to see Carlo's body this summer on a pilgrimage to Rome. So, Abby, do you want to tell us and Christian about what that was like to see Carlo's tomb, to see him? And was there any connection you made with how Christian depicted those students in the film seeing his tomb?
Yeah, so when we visited, we waited online for probably an hour with many other of like the youth. And it was just kind of inspiring before we even got there that there was so many people online like waiting to see like Carlo. Like it was kind of crazy that like everything that we've talked about at school, everyone like throughout the entire world was also learning about it and was there to like look at this miracle like just as we were. And once we got inside and were able to see his body, it was just kind of like kind of just struck me personally, like to see that like he was like around my age and like he was like a real person who did things just as like we would do throughout like our day, and now he's a saint. It was just really inspiring that someone so like normal, not normal, but like more like us is able to become something so amazing.
Did you when you were following the students to record them seeing Carlo's tomb, did you notice like what Abby described? Did you see that in all the other students too? It came through in the film, but I'm curious, obviously a lot of footage has to get left out, like what else they were saying, if they had a similar experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, yeah, and thanks for sharing that. It was an amazing moment, and that absolutely was the reaction of the students. All of that was so just real is really the word that I think sticks out in that whole experience. Like you mentioned, there's a lot of footage that can't make the final cut, and some of the fun things too, that like right before going to see the tomb, just out on the street in a CC between different events in the day, and some of the students were having Nutella gelato, and as it turns out, Nutella was Carlo's favorite food, and it just kind of came up as a fun fact. And then to go from eating his favorite dessert to seeing his body, a saint, there in the church in Assisi, it really strikes you in such a real way, and drives home that like they call him the saint in sneakers and jeans, and I think that's the kind of thing that really does hit when you go and see his body there in his tomb, and he is wearing sneakers and jeans, and he ate Nutella, and that relatability is incredibly powerful, and I think really strikes you in that moment. It definitely did for me as well, and all the students. None of us had been there before, had seen his tomb, except some of the chaplains who were along as the chaperones, and just a moment that really strikes you and leaves you, I think, wondering and thinking, what does this mean, and how does this experience of Carlo and seeing his body and learning about his life, what does that mean for me in my life, and how can I respond to that? And so that was a lot of the students on the pilgrimage had a very similar reaction, and I think I did as well myself.
It was amazing for me to see our students go into the church, and I didn't prep them much for what they were about to do, and they all kind of fell to their knees and were in prayer before his tomb, and it was amazing for me to see that, for them to make the connection as we waited online, that Carlo is not just somebody that we're talking about here at Kellenberg, right? That he's part of this story of the universal church, right? He is a part of our church, and that so many people had traveled there to Assisi to visit his tomb, to pray, to ask for his intercession, to help us to live holy lives, and he was able to do it. And, I think his example to our students is that, they can do it as well. And, it's, I think providential last week, with school, we, had a speaker in to talk about, the internet and the social media and, our smartphones and, how, they can take over us, and they can consume us. And, I think Carlo realized that, at such a young age, which is, amazing to me, that he would limit his time on video games and that he would use the internet to praise God, right? And I think that just speaks to our students who can so easily get trapped into the social media world, right? And to think that that's where life matters, but really, it's real life. It's being with real people, creating a relationship, a strong relationship with Jesus Christ, and then growing in love for him, and then sharing that love with everyone they encounter. So I really appreciated that part of your movie, that the kids had to, release their, take a break from their cell phones and all that. I think that was a great part. How did that develop in your movie to be a part of it?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, exactly. I think it's been fascinating to follow this kind of thread of like experiencing Carlo and the realness, the relevancy of his story, and how relatable he is. But then it's like, what does that actually mean? And how do we go from there to what does his example and life tell us about our lives today? And the fact that he knew and understood so much of our modern world and our modern technology, that means that that includes the things that are challenging and even dangerous in that, with social media, technology, the internet, all of the, this new technology comes with a lot of opportunities and a lot of good things, but also a lot of dangers, a lot of challenges. We talk about that a lot in the movie, and the amount of, young people today who especially young people who can struggle with that in different ways. And Carlo's example is one of moderation, and really one of my favorite lines in the movie, I think it was Chris Stefanik who says it essentially, that Carlo used the internet, but he did so with the express goal of getting people back off the internet and back into the real world, and into church, and into friendships and relationships with other people. And that was something that, on this pilgrimage, the students from North Dakota, they've leaving their phones behind entirely just opened the door for them to experience Rome, see their faith, learn about Carlo in a way that's just so direct and not without having technology in the way of that. It just it opened the door to a lot of a lot of grace, and a lot of different ways they were able to experience that, and many of them coming back from the pilgrimage, actually making decisions to change how they interact with technology and social media and the internet, and just kind of, knowing like, sure, Carlo might be sort of the patron saint of technology in different ways, and he was a computer programmer, he knew all this, but the way he only used it in ways that were very much in line with the faith and with the goal of spreading his faith and favoring, human dignity. And that's just, that's really powerful. I think that's something all the students on the pilgrimage that I had the opportunity to film were really struck by. And, maybe that was something that, I don't know if on your trip, if that was something that came through as well, but just really learning about how Carlo knew and understood this technology, but he used it in a way that was just very, very good, in line with human dignity and with the faith.
Yeah, I thought Abigail might be able to speak about that. Just, we didn't give up our phones totally, but we definitely tried to make some, times where we were phone free, screen free. Did you make some like new relationships, some new friendships on the pilgrimage, or talk about your own faith journey, how it grew?
Yeah, so we started off as like a rule that there were no phones at dinner, which kind of on the first night was like a little strange, like, but everyone was like talking and like getting to like see like how everyone's experience of that day was. And then slowly as the trip went on, I think through all of the experiences that we all got to see, that it became a thing of normalcy to not use your phone at dinner, to not use your phone throughout the entire day, because we were always just talking about like the things that were so crazy and beautiful that like we had seen that day, that it became second nature to not even check our phones, which I feel like is really related to what Carlo was like trying to do, to keep us on the internet only for the good, like with his Eucharistic miracles, and to stay off for the bad. So we were always off of our phones talking about all of the churches and the saints that we had spoken about that day, instead of like being disconnected from each other, which obviously is not as big as leaving our phones behind for the entire time, but it also gave us like a sense of staying away from the internet and all the things of online and growing back towards each other, even though some of us didn't even know each other to begin with, which I think was really nice.
Yeah, that's awesome. I feel like that's such a Carlo-inspired way of doing things, to put the phones away at dinner and just focus on conversation and recapping the day and getting to know each other. That's like exactly the kind of thing that I think Carlo would really appreciate in terms of, when and how to use technology and when to stay off of it.
So Christian, I want to introduce our other student to you who's here, John Furlong. John is the senior patrol leader of the scout troop, so essentially it's like the president, the youth that's in charge. And we've been talking a lot about how Carlo's real. Carlo impacts our youth, our relationships. And one of the goals of this event that the troop put on was to bring that reality to our community who couldn't go to his tomb the way that others have. We had relics and things like that. John, do you want to basically give Christian an idea of what we did, how you were involved, how it impacted you, and share some of that with Christian?
Yeah. So one of the bigger things was we had the relics of Carlo, Chaminade, Jabu Gap, and Frassati, we had Eucharistic Adoration, and the Boy Scout troop here, Troop 87, led the procession with the banner that we had made, Frassati, and then I led with the bells, and then we had two scouts holding candles leading the Eucharist down and up to the altar. And each of the scouts then guarded the relics, standing solemn guard of the relics, which was a good experience. So we each got to do that for about 20 minutes each, which was a really incredible experience to just be able to stand right in front of them and guard them from in front of the people. And the presence of that was even also incredible because recruitment was a big issue. So we also had the Eucharistic exhibit with all the miracles in the gym, which was a big popular thing, and I know a few people did come for just that, which was even nice for them to just come and see the miracles and read all about all of the miracles that Carlo researched and everything like that.
So the Eucharist was a big part of the night, and one thing I loved about the film, Christian, was obviously Carlo, we know he wore sneakers and jeans, but what really made him the saint was the Eucharistic spirituality. And you really touched on that in the film really well. Could you tell us a little bit more about things you learned about Carlo's understanding of the Eucharist through the film, like through producing it?
Absolutely. Yeah, the Eucharist was so clearly central to Carlo's faith and the way he looked at everything. Really, one of his best known quotes is, "The Eucharist is my highway to heaven." And it's very clear in what we know about Carlo and the way he lived his life. As soon as he knew and understood what the Eucharist was, that was what he desired most in his life. He went frequently to adoration. He, as you may have learned in the film, he kind of worked with his priest to receive his first communion as early as he could, and he just made very clear that was the center to him. That was what was most important. That one of the subtitle of the film, Roadmap to Reality. It's kind of like what is more real than the Eucharist, and kind of even tying that back to the conversation about technology and this digital world that can be fake in different ways, and this kind of sort of cheap replication of realities in different ways. What is more real than the Eucharist, and focusing everything on that that's absolutely the way Carlo looked at it. He brought his friend, his babysitter Rajesh to Mass, taught him about the Eucharist, and it was just really striking to see. He's relatable. He lived with faith, but at the core of that was his devotion to the Eucharist, and he's an amazing example of that, and as one's faith should be, he rooted everything in his soul for the Eucharist.
Can you tell our students and any of our listeners like how they could watch the film, and just tell us about this company and what it's about?
Yeah, absolutely. Castletown Media, production company behind the film. The film is available to stream at watchcredo.com. It's available there, and would love for anyone and everyone to watch it. I think there's something everybody can learn. All of the films we make at Castletown, our goal is to bring people closer to their faith, and also to challenge them in different ways, and kind of getting into the intellectual side of things, and understanding, going deep into Carlo's life and example. And that's what I hope we've done in this film. My encouragement to anybody who watches the film is just to be open to what does Carlo's life and example say to you, and are there ways in which learning about him challenges you and encourages you to change something in your own life, whether that's how you engage with technology, or making a deeper effort to go to Eucharistic adoration, to go to daily mass, the kinds of things that Carlo would encourage any of us to do. So yeah, the film's available at watchcredo.com. Credo is spelled Credo. And would encourage anybody and everybody to watch it. Carlo's example is obviously very especially relevant to young people today, and there's so much in his life that young people can relate to, but really anybody and everybody. He is such a saint for our times, and I think we can all learn a lot from him.
So we have about 5 minutes left, so I want to ask you one more question, that you just said how Carlo can challenge you. And when I saw the film and when I read Mrs. Acutis' book, My Son Carlo, this is what really challenged me. How Carlo dealt with suffering, offering that suffering to the Lord, embracing that suffering, never complaining about it. And in the film, spoiler alert, right? Carlo only speaks once, and you show that one clip where he says, "I am destined to die." And I just wanted to ask, that was so moving for me to hear him speak and hear the tone of his voice with the context of how he endured his leukemia. Is there more footage you went through of Carlo speaking, of having these kind of thoughts, having these kind of deep kind of visions or mystical thoughts that you didn't include in the film? And if so, could you share with us, to the extent that you're able, other things he may have said while you were editing? Or is that something maybe one day we'll be able to see in future versions of extended or other releases?
Yeah, I believe that particular moment, that is actually the only line that we have the video footage of. There isn't actually that much of Carlo's actual words that have been published at this point, and I hope more of that happens, especially now that he is canonized as saint, and what I would love to have a conversation with Carlo. That's not exactly possible, but it's even in the small bits we have these different quotes and things he said. Everything is. He really was kind of a teenage mystic in a lot of ways. There's such depth to everything he shared, and as part of that, his suffering and his brief but obviously very serious illness with leukemia that resulted in his passing. Like the way it was just so he understood that he was going to die, as we all are, and he understood that he was going to die at an early age, and he just approached that with such a grace and understanding of kind of the redemptive nature of suffering, and it was amazing just even hearing some things that came out of things he said, but also interviews with other people who knew him, how in his suffering and in the hospital, he was always asking the nurses and the people caring for him how they were doing, and seemed almost more concerned about them than himself. And he just approached his suffering understanding that it was something that everything was in line with I think it's obviously clear now with God's plan for his life, and how his example and including the grace he showed amidst his suffering, and how that's something that can impact us today as well, and understanding how he approached that. And so
that ties in so well with what we try to convey to our students, that their lives are not about them. Social media tells them it's all about them, and how many likes they get, but your lives are really about Jesus working through you. And I think Carlo is such a great example of that selfless love and looking out for others, and not just being so focused on ourselves. So that virtue of humility. So thank you for portraying that in the film.
So I want to thank... Oh, sorry, Christian.
No, I was just gonna agree. Absolutely, that's how Carlo approached everything, and it's powerful to see.
So I'd like to thank Christian, Father Dan, Abby, and John for joining us. And thank you very much for this conversation and for showing us more about Carlo Acutis' life and the film you produced. I'm Nick Castelli, and this is Flight of the Firebirds.